now that we have developed an understanding of our three rows here, transparent to opaque, the use of a primary color and secondary color next to each other on the color wheel to get an intermediate tertiary color, and then finally colors that are opposite on the color wheel, primary being red in this example and secondary being green, coming together to make a neutral gray. Okay, we see all that in the color wheel here. Now we're going to utilize two of these rows to create a sphere or a three-dimensional form on a two-dimensional flat surface. So we are going to understand the idea of building up opaqueness and the use of complementary colors. On your circle sheet here, you have a circle. Okay, a circle is a shape, which is one of your elements of art. We're going to turn that shape into a form, which once again is another element of art, and form is three-dimensionality. What you're going to do is develop a sphere. Once again, you do not have white paint, so you need to make sure you are understanding that the white is the paper. Okay, you're going to pick two complementary colors. We're not going to use black for this project. Absolutely no black. This whole painting was done with just two colors. Once again, colors that are opposite on the color wheel are complementary colors, and then that's what we're going to use to develop these nice dark values or neutrals. So you can pick red and green, like this example here, blue and orange, or yellow and violet. If you want to select the colors that you did previously on the last page, so because you already have practice with that, great. If you want to try something new, more power to you. So I'll leave that example right there. What we need to understand is where our light source is coming from. So the light source is coming from the top right corner here as to why there is a highlight on the sphere right here, and then the shadow is on the back side. Okay, and then the shadow is going to be cast onto the ground as well on the opposite side of where the light is coming from. So if you think about it, when you are outside on a hot sunny day and you want to cool off and stand in the shadow of a tree, you're standing in the shadow of the tree, which is on the ground, and that shadow is created by being blocked by the sun. So the tree is blocking the sun, creating that shadow. So remember that then you're on the opposite side of the sun because you're on the side of the shadow. So the shadow is not drawn on your piece of paper quite yet, but we will create that with paint. Shadows are always darkest closest to the object, which I'll talk about again when I'm actually painting, but you're going to have to pick where your light source comes from. If you want to do what I did, perfectly fine. So you're going to select two complementary colors with one another. I'm going to do blue and orange. You have two different avenues to go about this. So you can do, so for this example, you can do a red sphere with a green background. So this is, you have a horizon line. A horizon line is where the ground separates itself from the sky. So the horizon line here, the ground is below and then the sky is above. You're going to do the opposite complementary color. So I did a red sphere, so that means I did a green background, okay, or a ground plane. I could have done a green sphere with a red ground, or for me, I could do a blue with orange, or orange with blue, yellow with violet, or violet with yellow. That's all up to you. Go ahead and pick whatever your favorite colors are, whatever you feel most comfortable using. Once again, violet and yellow are probably going to be the most difficult due to the fact that violet is so more overpowering than yellow. But if you want to challenge yourself, go for it. Alright, so understanding how we start. You always want to start with a big brush when you have a big surface area. So I'm going to start with my largest flat edge brush. Okay. You then would come down and use your smaller brushes for smaller details, but with a bigger brush you have more ability to cover more at a time and it won't take you as long. So bigger brush for bigger areas to start, and then when you need to get down to the nitty-gritty and add all your little smaller details, then you would use a smaller brush. Okay, so you have the sky. You're going to try and keep that as clean as possible. Notice how there's no paint in my sky up above. It is 100% nice, crisp, clean white. So all the paint we're going to focus on is on the ground plane and the sphere itself with the shadow. Okay, you can get kind of artsy and fancy and kind of do that opaque to transparent fade. We did boxes last time, but this time you can try and understand how to blend it all together to go from opaque to transparent. You can just fill in the whole bottom. That's up to you. Always start with water on your brush. So I'm going to do a blue sphere with an orange ground. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with the orange. We usually want to work background to foreground. I'm going to create my own separate orange area in my palette, and then I'll create another blue area over here, and then we'll put them together to create the neutral grays or the shadows. Alright, so I'm going to come in, twist, turn your paper, whatever makes comfortable for you. Usually you want to pull towards you as you have most control there. We're using a flat edge brush to get right up against that perfectly straight line for our horizon line, and then you can come in right up against the edge of your circle, which will eventually become a sphere. Okay, then while that's still wet, you want to kind of fade it out and work it so it blends into the next area, coming right up against the edge. Be careful what's underneath your painting so you don't mess anything up. I'm getting paint on the desk, but I'll be able to clean that up afterwards. Grab some more paint. We can start to fade this out. Another idea I like to do is a dry brush technique. It does have a little bit of moisture in it, but I'm taking most of that moisture out, and then I'm just using the paint that's already on the paper to blend it out. Because sometimes we can overdo it with too much paint, but this brush doesn't have any paint on it until I hit the paper with it, and then I'll be able to blend out what's already on there. I'm going to come in with some more paint there, switch to my dry brush, which once again, it's called a dry brush, but it does have a little bit of liquid on it to keep the watercolor flowing. Okay, come over here, go right up against that horizon line. Nice, crisp, clean edges for craftsmanship points. Pull towards me, rotate right up against the edge of that sphere. Well, circle now, but will become a sphere. Grab some more paint and water. You want nice and opaque right up against that horizon line, and then we'll fade it out to transparent towards the bottom. And you want to make sure both sides of the horizon area or the ground plane are equal in opacity and transparency. Grab some more water to kind of blend out what's already on the paper. I'm going to grab some more paint and go more dark or opaque here on the horizon line so it matches the other side. And I'm going to blend that out. Come in with my dry brush, which does have water on it but no paint. Fade out what's already on the paper. And now you've understood how to make opaque to transparent with blending together instead of just making boxes, if this is the route you want to go. Smooth everything out. Nice big long strokes to get it all even. Make sure you don't get any orange paint inside that circle, but if you do, we will be able to cover it up eventually. Not ideal that you make mistakes with watercolor because it is hard to cover it up, especially if it's a dark color. Like if you're doing a yellow sphere with a purple background and you get purple inside the yellow area, then that's going to be hard to cover up because the purple is so much darker than the yellow. Alright. So now that we have our ground, I am going to make sure it's all evened out. It looks a little splotchy right there, so I'm going to grab more paint and fill in that area there. Okay, now that we have that completed, I'm going to let it dry. We want to make sure when we're working with our watercolors, especially when you're trying to create hard edges, you want your watercolor to dry so they don't bleed into each other. Okay, so if I were to come in with my blue now and fill in my sphere, while the orange is still wet on the edge, the blue would start to dissipate and go into the orange, and we don't want that. We want nice, clean, hard edges. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video there, and then I'll make a second part tutorial to it once I know that my orange has dried.